Hi everybody, I'm Nate Eaton with EastIdahoNews.com. We're joined today with Bonneville County Prosecutor Danny Clark. He has been the prosecutor for the county since January of 2015. He is running unopposed this year, and we're glad to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, Nate.
You know, you've had a busy year since you took office in January.
It has been, yes.
There's been so many cases. We know that Tanner Cox was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter after he punched a man who later died. The Brian Mitchell murder case. We had a deputy-involved shooting of a man at a gas station, a shooting investigation involving a bondsman. Why did you decide to run again when all of these things happened so fast?
Well, you know, I've been a prosecutor for a long time. I'm coming up on about 15 years, which around here, that's a long time. I still enjoy it. I love what a prosecutor does. I love the role that we play in the criminal justice system, and I felt like that was something that I'd like to continue doing.
Explain for those people that might not know what a prosecutor does. We know you're in court, but there's so much more to the job. And exactly how is your office set up?
Yeah, ironically, a very small piece of the job involves being in court. In fact, I would often say that's sometimes the easiest part of the job. What a prosecutor does is when someone is accused of or is alleged to have committed a crime, a prosecutor is the one that brings those charges to the court, that holds that person accountable. In Idaho, a lot of times you've heard the phrase pressing charges, things of that nature. In Idaho, the prosecutor is the one who presses charges. The reason for that is not to leave it up to any individual as to whether to press charges for an event, the purpose of which would be to try to have there be some continuity and some consistency in who's being charged and for what type of behavior. And
so it's your job to actually press those charges and then carry it through the court process.
That's correct. Yeah, once we decide to file charges on someone, we will then handle that case through all the court proceedings and ultimately, if need be, to prove the case in front of a jury.
Any idea how many cases you handle a year?
We handle average of about 700 felonies. The prosecutor's office does all of the felonies in Bonneville County. We also do the state and county misdemeanor offenses as well as the fish and game offenses. We also do the infractions for those same agencies, and as well as all child protection, juvenile, mental health, as well as the civil counsel to the various agencies and offices within the county.
So people may hear, wow, 700 felonies a year. Is that a high number, or is it more than normal?
No, we've averaged, I would say that we peaked in our overall felony crimes, 06, 07, 08, somewhere in there. We've steadily declined or stayed even since about that time. I think we handled some things a little differently around then, and I think we've seen good results as a result of those changes we made back then.
Mm-hmm. One of the big cases of last year was the Brian Mitchell murder case. He's the man accused of killing a man in a pretty violent stabbing at Tautphaus Park. He ended up taking his life in jail, and a lot of people wonder where that case would have gone. And I guess you don't really know at this point, but where did you foresee it going?
Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, we filed the charge because we felt like he had committed a crime. I still feel that way. It leaves a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth, I suppose, for everyone involved. I feel sorry for him and certainly his family that he felt like it had to come to that. We would have been excited to see him held accountable in court, certainly to get some closure for the victims. It's unfortunate when you have a case like that, the only version of the events you have are the suspects in this case. And so the victims' families had to deal with that. So there's some unanswered questions that they would have liked. You know, when I first met with them, I sat down and I said, look, we're going to get some answers to things. And that's something that I had told them I would get for them, and I wasn't able to do that. So that's unfortunate. There's still some scientific testing that's being done on that case so that we can make sure we know everything that's gone on there. But I don't anticipate any changes at this point. So it's just a sad conclusion to that case for everyone involved, including the defendant.
Yeah. You know, one of the questions or one of the issues you have to balance as a prosecutor is the public's right to know information versus the person's right to privacy, whatever the case is. What's your view on transparency in government and releasing information versus holding it back?
Well, that's a very easy answer for me. There are some who view that statute as, if I don't have to give it to you, I'm not going to. My view on it is, unless I've got some very good reason not to, and the law prohibits me from disclosing this information, I always turn it over. That's just simply my practice. That's been the county's practice for some time, and as long as I'm involved, that's the way it'll be done. I think it's rare that a case is so sensitive that we certainly are not going to try the case in the press. We're not going to disparage a suspect or a defendant while their case is pending and put out facts that taint the jury pool. That's the point of doing it. So we're certainly not going to do those things. But in terms of allowing the press and the public to be informed of what's going on, we're going to release that stuff all the time. Now, there's occasion, you brought up the officer-involved shooting, for example. Some said, well, gosh, we should have released that video immediately because it exonerated those police officers. And I would tend to agree with you. The problem is, if I do that, I'm then listening to the public's input on whether that conduct was correct or not, rather than just analyzing it with the facts that I'm shown. I'm now listening to everyone involved in their opinions on it, and that's not the way that's supposed to be done. So I appreciated your patience and the public's patience in letting us complete that investigation before we released that information.
You're going to take office most likely. I mean, it looks like you're set to take it. What do you hope to accomplish over the next 4 years? Anything you want to change or do differently?
Well, there's a couple things we've started doing better already. I mean, I told, a year ago when I was appointed, I told the Republican Central Committee, if you're looking for a big change in the way we operate, I'm not the one to pick because we've been making these changes for years. Started with Dane Watkins, Bruce Pickett, and so I've been instituting changes for quite a while, but there's a few things we've done a little differently. Over this past year, we have entered into an MOU, an agreement with the City of Idaho Falls to prosecute their misdemeanor offenses that are associated to a felony charge. The purpose of that is historically, you'd have let's use a possession of meth and a possession of paraphernalia charge. Each one of those would have a separate case, separate prosecutor, city attorney's office, county prosecutor's office, separate defense attorney, separate judges, separate discovery, separate files, all of these things. And it was just complicating a system that didn't need to be. With that agreement with the city, that has streamlined that into one case, and all of those cases are handled together. It simplifies the process, makes it more efficient. The goal would be two things. One, close the gap between the time of the conduct and the accountability. Handling a defendant's a lot like handling your 5-year-old. You can't spank him a week later for something he did, a week earlier. It just isn't effective. You need to deal with that thing right then. Did I just say spank? Am I allowed to say spank? Where's the lie? You got to deal with that immediately. And that's always best in the criminal justice system as well, dealing with it sooner. So it makes that process faster. Two, it allows the case to be viewed and watched and observed by the victims much better and not as complicated. So that's one thing we've done. We're going to get that better. I mean, you can understand that's had some hiccups to it, and we're working through those. The second thing we've done is I've just authorized an assistant to our victim witness coordinator. By statute, victims have a constitutional right to certain things, and a couple of those very important ones are knowing what's going on and having access to the criminal justice process. We have hired, and she'll start soon, an assistant to our victim witness coordinator. We're funding that through some grant funding right now, but we have approval for the county to take on that bill around this time next year. Now, that being said, I've also done that cost neutral. We've pulled that out of money that we've already budgeted for. It's not going to cause any increase in our budget. So we're going to get better, and I've always said this, we're going to always get better at handling victims and making sure they're a part of and invited to participate in the process.
Danny Clark, we appreciate your service. Again, he's running for Bonneville County Prosecutor. The election is May 17th. We would encourage you all to vote. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.